Hello everyone, welcome to the first lecture of the Gender Studies series presented by the CSS World. In this video, we will cover the introduction of gender studies. Let's start this lecture now. Here is the list of the topics which would be covered under this lecture. The contents include Introduction to Gender Studies, in which we will study the definition of gender studies and basic understanding of the term. Then we will study gender intersectionality, and after that we will discuss that what is the difference between gender and sex. Then we will move towards the history of gender studies. After that we will understand the concept of gender equality, and then we will move towards the topic feminism and gender studies. And at the end of the lecture we will study about queer movement. So these all topics will jointly present an introduction to gender studies as a whole. Let's start this lecture now. First of all, introduction to gender studies. Gender studies is an academic area of study that critically examines how gender shapes our identities, our social interactions, and our world. So from this brief definition of gender studies, we understand that gender studies is basically a subject which deals with the study of the role of gender in shaping this world and all that happenings around the globe. Keep in mind that gender studies is an interdisciplinary area of study, focuses on the complex interaction of gender with other identity markers such as race, ethnicity, sexuality, nation, and religion. As this study revolves around the word gender, so understanding this general and very common word is also very important. Gender is basically either of the two sexes, male and female, especially when considered with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. The term is also used more broadly to denote a range of identities that do not correspond to established ideas of male and female. Gender intersectionality. Intersectionality is basically a framework which focuses on the ways in which gender interrelates with other social categorization such as ethnicity, class, sexuality, identity, age, disability, etc. So this is also another aspect of the gender study. Under gender studies, we focus on the acts of gender, that how gender is behaving and pursuing its relations with other class, ethnicity as a whole. So this is basically gender intersectionality. Difference between sex and gender. There is always a confusion in these two words. So it is very important to draw a distinction between both these words. Keep in mind that sex refers to biological characteristics that categorize someone as either female or male, whereas gender refers to socially constructed ideas and practices what it is to be male or female. Sex denotes visible difference in genitalia and related difference in procreative function, whereas gender is a socio-cultural construct and it refers to masculine and feminine qualities, behavior patterns, related roles and responsibility, etc. So this is basically the difference between gender and sex. Now we will study the history of gender studies. Keep in mind that gender studies is not a very old subject. Instead, it emerged during 1970s. Basis for gender studies were laid during 70s when women in academia protested against the ways in which academic knowledge production made women invisible and ignored gendered power relations in society. So these feminists in academy work to begin a place for study of women. In 1970, women faculty at San Diego State University, that is SDSU, taught upper division women's studies classes on a voluntary overload basis. SDSU Senate approved Women's Studies Department and a curriculum of two courses in 1970. School hired one full-time instructor. Other instructors included students and faculty members of already existing departments. So this was the beginning of gender studies as a subject. After the establishment of this department, other schools and colleges also followed it and kept on establishing the departments of gender studies. In 1970, academic and feminists formed National Women's Studies Association, that is commonly known as NWSA, which further boosted the process of flourishing of this subject. Currently, there are more than 600 women's studies programs, research centers and libraries in United States only. The writers who played an important role in promoting the gender studies include Gloria Boyles and J.B. Landis. Theories of women's studies by Gloria basically pursues for the historical bindings of the study and demonstrates fruits of this study as the proper discipline. On the other hand, J.B. Landis proposed linkage of gender studies with philosophy and cultural studies. In this way, discussion of linking gender studies with other subjects began. Diverse research tradition flourished during 70s in this subject. Lesbian, gay, bi and trans studies, that is commonly known as LGBT studies, flourished. The process is still continued and flourishing day by day. So this was basically a brief history of the subject gender studies. Now we will understand the concept of gender equality. Confusion also prevails regarding the concept of gender equality. So it is also important to clear that confusion by exactly knowing the concept of gender equality. Gender equality requires equal enjoyment by women and men of socially valued goods, opportunities, resources and rewards. So keep in mind that gender equality doesn't mean that men and women become same, but their opportunities and life chances are equal. So if the women and men of a particular society are having same opportunities and being treated equally, then we can say that there is gender equality in that particular society. Feminism and gender studies. Although feminism and gender studies are closely embedded with each other, but still there is a difference between feminism and gender studies. Gender studies is basically a field of knowledge and study, whereas feminism is both a political movement and field of knowledge and study. There would have been no gender studies without feminism as a driving force. So we can say that it was feminism which made gender studies a proper discipline. Queer movement. Queer movement is a term which often used in gender studies. So its meaning in these studies is inevitable to understand the subject. Queers is originally a derogatory label of homosexuals, but in context of gender studies, it is used in connection with homosexuality research and with efforts to combat normative status of heterosexuality in society and culture. So this was all for building an introductory concept of gender studies, under which we discussed various important things regarding the subject. So this was all from today's lecture. Thanks for watching this video. Like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to press the bell icon for more videos. Goodbye.